Welcome to the parade ring of HollywoodBets Kenilworth. It's with great excitement that we bring you a slight remix on our Taking the Reins show, which you would have seen. We've been around the country doing various interviews with major trainers, and we are now bringing you the Taking the Reins preview show, of which we will be featuring these shows in the build-up and all the preliminaries into our Cape Summer Festival meetings here at HollywoodBets Kenilworth. As you would have seen in the racing press by now, we've introduced 9 headline festival meetings, which will be bringing all patrons, owners, and punters on course. A vastly different on-course experience, and we are also rejuvenating what's happening on the track, keeping a little bit different from our regular in-season days by pumping up the prize money. And of course, we have introduced fantastic bonuses for raiders in terms of the Race Cape incentive scheme. 50,000 Rand up for grabs for every owner and trainer each of a festival winner. For all the raiders, we've already seen the Funzale Yard reel off a couple of wins at our in-season meetings, banking those various 10,000 Rand checks. And it's going to be a fantastic season that we're looking forward to. We are doing this show with a little bit of a spin. We will be obviously getting various trainer and jockey comments throughout all our content and on 240 as race meetings approach. So we thought with our preview show, especially with the first show being the Cape Punters Cup, we would bring you a punting, gambling-centric type of show. And for that reason, we've got none other than the man on my right to help us through the race card as our first summer festival meeting, the Cape Punters Cup. Felix, welcome to the show. Thank you for taking some time out. And I know you're going to guide us in terms of the betting, various potential betting moves we could be looking at. Obviously, we've got a little bit of anti-post betting and early betting that's come out, but obviously the liquidity comes race morning, and that's when the market changes. And you'll just be guiding us along with how you think horses are probably going to start off come race time. And just give us from an outsider's point of view looking in, how so far has the season looked for you? Obviously, things have changed with Cape Racing recently, and season in full swing now.
Firstly, thanks for having us, or for having me here, just a real privilege. Cape Racing so far has been unbelievable. I mean, to be back at the racecourse almost every meeting it's been exceptional. You guys have really revitalized the whole racing experience for owners and racegoers on a daily basis. Not just for an owner, but for your average punter, the whole experience is completely changed. And I think it's fantastic what you guys have done.
I think what's very important is the cross mix of horses coming in. Absolutely. And it's been very, very good to see the Raiders doing so well so far. And we'll touch into that when we get into a little bit of the Durban form. But the way it's been holding up has been really encouraging from a Raiders point of view. But we'll dive straight into it. And the first race we're going to talk about, we're going to keep it mainly to the main races, and we'll touch on other horses throughout the card for exotic purposes. But Race 2 sees the inaugural running of the Summer Bowl. Now, the Summer Bowl was a race we put on the program as essentially a prep race for the Victor Stakes coming up on HollywoodBets Guineas Day. We introduced a couple of these type of preps over the weeks, and we saw the Bantry Bay Stakes last week, which had, I think it was six individual Group 1 winners in it, and as a prep for the Cape Merchants. So this is the Summer Bowl Victress prep, and once again, not a massive field, but Kurt, we see some super high quality fillies here.
Absolutely.
And none less than Shanzanay.
Absolutely. A small field, but high class fillies and mares in the race. A filly like Shanzanay coming back second and after a rest. You could see her last start. She needed it that last 100 meters desperately, and I think she's going to be cherry ripe in her next start for Saturday. Just to run through the betting, she's around 12 to 10 at the moment. You can see just traveling through the race here, she's absolutely cantering.
Yeah, Kurt, so this is the Diana Stakes, which obviously was at HollywoodBets Durbanville. I mean, she's moved up, she's hit the front here, going super, super well. And I think 100% fit Shanzanette would have put the race to bed there, but as we see, she starts to hang a little bit towards the outside, a sign of maybe a little bit of tiredness, and Santa Maria just comes over the top and wins the race. I think Shanzanette, that's not ring rusty and has that fitness to her, probably would have put that race to bed. Yeah. But that's an encouraging sign. Obviously, Kurt, as you were saying, coming off quite a bit of a layoff there.
But staying on at the end, which is always encouraging. Just to run through the betting, she's currently 12 to 10, and rightly so. She is the class package. She is probably the distance specialist in the race. I mean, a filly like, a mare like Marina is probably going to be looking for slightly further in a race. She's currently sitting at 16 to 10 And then a filly like Silver Darling is currently around 7-2, 4-1. Both those two fillies are going to probably need their first start back after rest. So rightly so, Chansonnet sitting at around 12-10 is the right price.
And I think, what do you think come race time? Will she come in a little bit, or is there some leverage there?
Very hard to say. I mean, the stable hasn't been firing here in Cape Town. They've only had winners in Durban at recent. I would say 12-10 around even money is probably the right price, purely because Marina and Silver Darling would probably need their first runs, and it's not their optimum trip. So around even money, I would say, is the right price time of race.
Fantastic. And I do know for the viewers out there, we would have seen a little bit of discussion with Justin Snaith, a couple of interviews at his yard. He feels like Silver Darling, with this run under the belt, especially, could be a force to be reckoned with come Paddock Stakes, Mallorca Stakes. Group 1 winning filly, and they're expecting a big season from her. So a very intriguing race, and of course, to have the quality of horse like Chansonnet racing again here at HollywoodBets Kenilworth as she builds up into her season is going to be a fantastic race to watch. But let's dive now into the 6th race, which is the newly named Cape Punters Cup. It's been long associated with Selangor, our Malaysian Turf Club partners, and they obviously gave up the race a couple years ago. We saw Concord come on board as the sponsors, which also ran out, I think, 2 years back. And as part of the themes that we're doing over the summer festival, we have dedicated this race meeting and this event to the punters. There's various punters initiatives going out throughout the day. And the Cape Punters Cup, this is the inaugural running, and it is what we will be sticking to going forward and building on this festival. This will be our opening meeting. So, Kurt, with that, how's the betting looking for the top couple of horses?
Currently, just Cousin Casey, rightly so, favourite at 18-10. Lightspeed sitting at around 4-1, 7-2, depending on who's priced up. Le Morne and At My Command around 13-2, 6.5-1. Dave the King around 10-1. And pretty much any price, anything else in the race, right around 20-25-1, bar those.
Well, that's fantastic. We'll start with the favourite, and we've seen a lot of gallop footage going around. He's done his work here, and we'll touch on Cousin Casey as we pull up the rerun to see that super performance out at Greyville when he won that Group 1. And what a force to be reckoned with. He was by far and away the top juvenile of last season. You see here, Kurt, he's taking a little bit of niggling just to stay with that pace. But once he gets into open running, and you can see him drop there, he rolls off the horse in front of him. And now it's about quickening and going on to win the race, and he does it in a matter of strides.
Absolutely. A typical Hollywood Grant van Niekerk ride, going 6 wide, but he puts the race to bed in a matter of strides. And I mean, you can see Grant doesn't ask him too much in the closing stages, and he wins hands and heels, it's very impressive.
Yeah, and I think what's quite promising is that the horses in behind him, Royal Victory, Prophet, etc., they went up to Johannesburg, and they've pretty much held that line of form
Absolutely.
up. It's been really good. I think that Royal Victory is a quite solid horse, and he's
100%.
maybe a horse we're going to see on the HollywoodBets Guineas as well. But Cousin Casey, I think we got to pretty much agree that if he rocks up here, pretty much in that type of form, that level of fitness, he's going to be the horse to beat.
If he does need the run and he's fit and well, he's going to be the horse to beat, no doubt.
And one thing about Glenn, I think, especially we've seen the horse, he's had a couple of gallops here. Glenn, he does tend to get them pretty fit for a return. And
absolutely.
No doubt about it, there's going to be meat on the bone here for later on in the season. But at the end of the day, this is the stepping stone into the big one for the middle of the month, next month. And I'm pretty sure we're going to see a very good performance from Cousin Casey. Main dangers, Kurt, we're looking at a horse possibly light speed. We're going to see the rerun now of him in the Langerman. He's been the leading light of the Cape juveniles, the horses that didn't go to Durban. What do you think about his chances here as we look at him here? On the lead, a big horse, this guy. Remember, as a yearling, he was a really awkward, big type of yearling, and he's grown into his frame. And, you know, he's been the best horse in his races. And Keegan here, so this is Grant riding him, has taken him up and used his action. And look at him go. I mean, he's a big striding horse, and he wins the Langman really well.
Absolutely, yeah. He won this race really well. And even his next start at HollywoodBets Durbanville, he did everything the hard way. He had to go to the front, and he was gutsy, and he comes back and he fights hard. And that's what I like about this horse. He never throws in the towel, and he just digs down deep every single time. And that's a sign of a very good horse.
You could see there that horse in the light blue there, Port Louis, headed him at a stage.
Absolutely.
Had a bit of a change of stick, change of stride, and I think that's indicative of the type of horse Lightspeed is. He is more of a, dare say, going 10 furlong when he's got...
I would agree 100% there.
When he's got such good form over a bit shorter, but that's the type of horse he looks like. And I think even though he's coming off a bit of a 70-odd day break here, I think we'll see a massive performance from Lightspeed. What about the other dangers, Kurt? This race doesn't stop there if you take them out. We've got a horse like Dave the King. Now, when I looked at him early on in the season, I thought, wow, potential gold rush horse here. He's really talented, but what do you make of his chances?
Well, 2 or 3 runs back, I thought he was my Guineas horse, and then he went all wrong at Durbanville, HollywoodBets Durbanville. You know, at the same time, he's done nothing wrong after that. I mean, he probably needed his last start, but this is a true test for him now. He needs to produce now to be taken seriously. A horse like Le Mans, he's 3 from 3. He's been super impressive. He's a beautiful specimen. Again, he's been thrown in the deep end today or on Saturday, and this is a true test for him. The other danger, at my command, the only question mark for me is stamina issues. If he gets to trip, he's got to be a runner. But in my opinion, on the dam side, he doesn't quite stay, and that's the only issue for me.
I think you're right there, Kurt. I mean, Brett's got a fantastic hand here. This horse, At My Command, got a lot of speed. I think a mile is going to be really top of his tier there, and I think with that bad draw, he might have to
He's going to really
himself.
work for it.
That might take that little bit of edge out of him. So, very competitive race. I think Cousin Casey, Lightspeed, depending on their condition. Dave the King is there as well, but it's a fantastic prelude into the HollywoodBets Guineas.
Absolutely.
And that brings us to the end of our first segment. So sit tight, and after this international racing, we will bring you the Sophomore Sprint. Welcome back as we move into the next headline event for the sophomores on the card. A very interesting, very intriguing race, which has a couple of talented speedsters lining up against each other, and that's none other than the Sophomore Sprint, an listed event over 1,200 meters. Kurt, there's a couple of quick horses in this race. Interesting race because we see a couple of cross form lines. We've got horses that have run against each other a couple of times, and then some new influences, as we'll get into from 1 or 2 raiders.
Yes.
To start it off, how are they looking in the betting?
At the moment, just Hit 'em Hard Sunshine sitting at around 16, 18 to 10 in the market. He's favourite, and rightly so. Trumpy sitting around 33 to 10, 7 to 2. We're Jamming and Piroshka sitting 6 to 1. And Iconic Destination, probably the value in the race at about 8 to 1.
Well, yeah, it looks like the way things have been priced up. Obviously, we're looking at the Trumpy and Hit 'em Hard Sunshine line coming to the top of the market, which is quite interesting because, as you touched on in terms of value there with Iconic Destination, I mean, he is coming from some serious form lines, running in behind Dave the King and Charles Dickens. I think you get the impression here, he went to Fairview, attempted the mile, which you'd want to do with a horse like this, is to test the stamina.
Yeah.
I think he looks like, without knowing the horse obviously as well as the connections, but he looks like a horse that might just be better suited to a straight 6 furlong.
Absolutely.
And therefore, I think at that price, you've got to say there's quite a bit of value about him.
Huge value in my opinion. And you know, when he won his maiden, he won very impressively, albeit not the strongest of fields, but you got to respect his second and third start behind Dave the King and Charles Dickens. And both of those starts were over 1,200 and 1,250 respectively.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's go to the rerun where the 2 horses at the top of the betting boards met each other last time out in the Need for Speed Sprint. So we've got Hit 'em Hard Sunshine, who's slightly off the pace in the Hollywood colours with the yellow cap at the moment. You've got Trumpy on the inside with a red cap, who this horse, I mean, he looked like a racing phenom as a 2-year-old when he blew them away first time out. And obviously, a little issue came up next time out because he got to spend a lot of time off. And here he is, first run in the season, run a cracking race.
Yeah, as you can see, Grant moved up with a double handful, probably moved up a bit too quickly and probably needed the run. And also just a bit short of his best distance. He's probably looking for the 1,200 metres. And Trumpy, he's 2 from 2 now over 1,000 metres. And very impressive. I mean, everything that everybody thought he was as a 2-year-old, he reproduced it in the Need for Speed Sprint.
Yeah, that's correct. So it's going to be interesting to see now, obviously, I think the big question mark with Trompy being that extra furlong. Physically, it looks like he's probably a candidate to get the trip. I think now second run, obviously it's going to be very hard to try and draw a line between the two until we see the race. But I think, as we touched on a little bit earlier, the interesting play here really is with those horses that have actually been exposed at a slightly higher level and away from iconic destination. We can also include We're Jamming in that. I mean,
Absolutely.
I was chatting to Justin Snaith about this horse, I think it was 2 weeks ago or so, and I drew a comparison between that top-class Lawrence Vernus filly called True to Life. Now, she is a Duke of Marmalade, just like We're Jamming, and you would think, wow, probably going to go a trip. So True to Life as a juvenile blew them away over sprints, and then she went 14 in a mile, and the guys were flabbergasted when she ran unplaced in those juvenile events. And then we brought her back to sprint trips, and she became, I think she placed in Group 1s from 2 till 6. She was a top sprinter, ran second in multiple Group 1 sprints.
Yeah.
She was 540 kilos of pure sprinting muscle. And this horse We're Jamming now, a gelding, he's a little bit similar. He's a strong guy, he's got a lot of speed, and he probably just doesn't go further than 1,200 meters.
No, absolutely not. And in my opinion, he's also got to be the value in the race. I mean, you can't fault his 2 starts over the 1,200, and both of them being in features, the nursery and the Cape Thoroughbred sales race. So he switches off beautifully in the race, especially over the 1,200. If there's a slight headwind on the day, he's got to be a horse you've got to respect in the race. And around 6 to 1, he's incredible value for punters.
Fantastic. Well, let's move on to the last. I'll tell you why, Kurt, because this is a bumper field. We've got a big field. And, of course, playing the quartets here is going to be the play. So let's touch on some roving bankers. Give us 2 roving bankers.
Well, it's a minefield of a race. I mean, it's a perfect quartet race if you ask me, and that's why we've decided to take a quartet. I mean, obviously, the 2 obvious horses in the race have got to be Sundazed and Let It Burn. The 2 form horses in the race, you can't really fault their form. If you look through the form of Sundazed, there's Sergey, there's At My Command, and then he won last time, which it was an impressive win. But the form on his last start. The weight turnaround with Let It Burn, you've got to throw in Let It Burn. So we're going to rove those 2 horses in the quartet with a few horses.
So let's go through them, because I thought this number 6, King Regent, I remember him as a yearling. We raced the brother Crimson King with Green Street, and he was a very similar horse, quite long in the Paston, very dynasty-like. He looked like he'd go a trip, but my goodness me, popped up first time out at 20 to 1 running on. He's got 52 kilos here. He's got to have a squeak for a place chance.
Has to have a huge chance. And he won impressively, and he took off in those last few hundred meters when he won his maiden in impressive style too.
And I think looking at this horse Le Mans, Kurt, I mean, he's a horse who he started his juvenile career off very well. He's attempted to go a little bit of a trip. He hasn't quite performed up in class. Coming back to the straight, speedy type of horse, do you give him a chance as well?
Has to have a chance. I mean, look who he's been running against, Charles Dickens. You've got to take note when you see form like that. Drop him back to a 1,200. You've got to respect him, and he is value as well, around 10 to 1.
Yeah, so I think roving banker, those 2 we touched on, throw in those up-and-coming youngsters. You've got to look at older horses like the 3 Poltergeist, 4 Transact, and even further down the page, I mean, Mars Vigilante's got to have a chance at his best form.
He was taken up and running last time. You got all the excuses in the book last time. He's another horse that you've got to throw in the quartets. If you turn over the page right at the back, Silent Trigger, another horse that's got interwoven form lines with Sundazed. He's also got solid form. You've got to consider him when you're putting him into a quartet too.
Fantastic. Well, Kurt, thanks very much. That's a very comprehensive wrap-up. And I'm going to ask you to nail your colours to the mast here. Give us a best bet for the day and possibly a value bet.
Just as far as the best bet goes, if Chansonnet comes back to her best, she doesn't need the second runner of the rest syndrome like most professional punters use. I think she's got to be the best bet on the card. My value bet for the day, as we discussed earlier off air, is Wiley Riley. If you look at his 2 runs over 1,400 in Durban, absolute crackers. And the form that's reproduced from those 2 runs have been standout runs. So that's my value bet at around 5, 6 to 1.
Well, there we go. Kurt's going for a value bet. Another raider looking for some Race Cape bonus checks. And thank you very much for joining us for our first Taking the Reins preview show. We will be back before the World Sports Betting Fillies Guineas as we take you into what will be our second festival meeting. Thank you for tuning in. Happy racing.